Appreciate that introduction, Brad. My name's Steve Moore. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey.
It's good to be here. Good to see everybody. First of all, congratulations, Brad. Is it 21 years that you're celebrating? 20 years? Don't want to spot you, but that's not until the 29th. 30th. I keep up with those guys good. So in case you make it to the 30th, congratulations. I think we're going to go ahead and give you a chip tonight. I guess. I don't know. It depends on if y'all spot him 3 days. But congratulations to you and to Shirley. I know you're out there somewhere. Yeah. Shirley's one of the most important home group members we've got. She keeps us supplied with coffee, water, and cake, and a lot of other stuff. I think she's an impulse buyer. She goes and just buys all kinds of stuff and brings it, but we appreciate it. And Nori is also celebrating this month, so congratulations to Nori as well. I need to keep those guys in our prayers. So it's good to be here, good to be sober. My sobriety date is March 26, 1984. Home group is the primary purpose group, Alcoholics Anonymous. In case y'all don't know, and some of you might not, we might just assume people know stuff. We meet here at this church on Mondays and Thursday nights at 7 o'clock. So if you're new here tonight and don't like what you hear, come back Monday night, you'll hear a whole different set of lies probably from somebody leading one of the meetings. But I encourage you to come back. And I appreciate being a part of this group. I appreciate being a part of a Three Legacy group, which what that means to me, and I think what it means in general, is that we've got recovery, unity, and service in place in this group. And I'll always appreciate that. And that comes from good leadership down through the years and good leadership even today. I appreciate our group officers and everybody through the years that has served this group and that currently serves. Brian is our current GSR, does a great job. He's led us through him and Brian both led us through some interesting times the past 14 months. And I think we've came out at more of a solid home group at the end of that than one could ever expect. And I appreciate that. Appreciate this church for allowing us to meet here for as long as we have, and certainly through the last year or so. Appreciate Josh. You really should put your hat back on. But anyway, no, I'm kidding. He asked me how I came out in court today. And like for a minute, I'm like, I must have been in a blackout. I don't remember going to court. But then I realized that usually if you show up at an AA meeting in a coat and tie, that you probably had been to court. And so I was acquitted, in case anybody cares. But it's funny you to think that wouldn't even come to mind what that was all about. But so I may talk about going to court. I don't know. I'm gonna try to talk about drinking whiskey and doing a lot of other stuff. But anyway, just appreciate good leadership. And one of the things that I did want to mention is, I am trying to be committed to this home group. I try to be committed to helping guys, and that doesn't just happen automatically. That doesn't come natural to me. What I had to do is watch other people as much as anything, and ask some questions, and saw other people lead by example, and I thought, that makes sense. And I'm a guy, and I'll just get to talking about drinking whiskey eventually, but I'm a guy that's been sober since day one, since I was introduced to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. What I found here is a power that has helped me stay sober and stay free, and helped me through some very, very dark, difficult times in sobriety. I've been through some tougher times in sobriety than, I guess I went through some tough times drinking, but I don't remember because I was drunk. But going through life and dealing with life sober is a different ballgame, and it's not easy. But what I found is the program of recovery we have here is a very simple program, and I try not to complicate it when I'm reading the book and trying to apply that those principles to my life, and I try not to complicate it when I work with a new guy. And hopefully I'll get into some of that. So the other thing that I think is important that I hear people say is I do have a sponsor. I'm current with my sponsor. We meet at least once a month. And, I just want to make sure that I'm current with everything. And I do try to help some folks along the way. So I'm a guy, I was born and raised here in Moore County, over in Carthage. Youngest of 6 kids, nothing really at all traumatic in my family growing up. It was a good family, a lot of love, a lot of support. Youngest of 6 kids, and just growing up, looking back, it was a really good, solid family. Now, I didn't feel like that when I was coming up through there, especially early on. I always felt like maybe it'd be better if I was born into a different family, maybe a family that had, a lot of money or whatever that looked like. But I just felt like, I don't know, and nobody did this to contribute to the way I felt, but I just felt like I didn't fit in. Like, I don't know, for whatever reason, I didn't get it. And so growing up, my dad, my parents owned a store in Carthage. It was a Western Auto. Back in the day, it was almost like a mini Walmart. I mean, we carried everything. And so, my dad was mechanically inclined. He taught me how to fix things. And luckily, I was able to pick up on that and was able to make that work and utilize the skills. My dad always said, if you can make a living with your hands, you'll never go hungry. And that's been my experience. That's been true. Dad told me a lot of things that was true. I didn't pay attention so much at the time, but looking back, I appreciate what I was shown growing up in that family. The thing about it is, I had a lot of fear, a lot of confusion. I don't know where that come from. I really don't realize how much I had of that looking back. Mostly when I was in the middle of it, I was anxious and full of fear and insecurities, but like at the time I didn't really think too much about it. And what happened, I'll jump right into how my membership in Alcoholics Anonymous got a good start. I was around 11 years old camping out with some buddies of mine. Now I was in the Boy Scouts. I was probably, if they would have had a merit badge of being the sorriest Boy Scout on the planet and the most selfish and dishonest Boy Scout on the planet, I would have gotten that one like easy. I'll tell you how, I wasn't raised like this. I was raised with some different morals, but I knew where they kept the merit badges, so I stole enough merit badges to go through the ranks. But I never became Eagle Scout. Like, I was a poor thief even then. I mean, if you think you'd steal enough just to like be an Eagle Scout, but they maybe paid more attention when you get progressing up the ladder of Boy Scout success. But anyhow, I was the Boy Scout you'd want to be camping out with, because we'd usually I'd end up with having some beer and jumping ahead a little bit, but there might have been on occasion we'd have a little sack full of weed to smoke on the camping trips too. I don't think that's one of the mottos of Boy Scouts, but I was changing things a little bit. But anyhow, let's get back to camping out. I wasn't on a Boy Scout camping trip, not that really makes this any better or worse, but I was camping out with some buddies of mine, and we got a hold of some Mad Dog 2020. And I'd experimented with alcohol before that, but I drank enough of that stuff to just to change things. And that fear and insecurity and doubt and confusion, whatever it was rolling around in my brain, went away. And I felt good. I loved the way it made me feel. I felt a part of. I don't really know what happened that night. I was with 2 other guys. Nobody has made any amends, so I don't know if they took advantage of me or not. I don't want to know, but I don't want to know. So but all I know is alcohol freed me of that bondage that I was living in, of that fear and doubt. And I didn't just spin out of control and become a wino at 11 years old, because my drinking was limited when I would camp out and stay out overnight or whatever. But what happened about this same time, I had one of my older brothers and a friend of his. We went off one night, and again, I'm like 11 years old, and they introduced me to smoking weed. And I fall in love with that. And one of the reasons I loved it is it was easy to get, easy to conceal, easy to hide, and I could get high during the week, break out my trusty bottle of Visine, and other than going home and eating everything in the kitchen, my parents really never knew. I thought I came from like a pretty strict home. Like, my parents didn't just let me run wild. Well, I didn't think they did when I was in the middle of it, but looking back, like, I don't know if it was because I was the youngest of six and my mom was just tired or what, but they weren't paying attention. And the other thing is, and some of you might can identify with this, but I'm pretty good at flying below the radar too. Like, to get what I want, I'm going to try to shuck and jive and do what I can to not get caught. And I was pretty successful with that growing up, or through my even preteen and I guess teenage years. And so, I'm getting high every chance I get, because weed's pretty easy to get. We're getting alcohol, with older brothers. I mean, we could steal it if we were pretty slick, or it just wasn't a problem getting it. And I fell in love with everything that was associated with drinking and that kind of lifestyle. By the time I got to high school, so at this time, like, I've progressed. I don't know if you'd say I was out of control, but it was all I focused on. Like, when I learned about the mental obsession with getting high, and that's part of what makes me an alcoholic, and part of what makes up the illness of alcoholism. I had that mental obsession. Like, I'm thinking about when is the next time we're going to roll, and what's that going to look like. So I spent a lot of time thinking about that. And when I got to high school, we were getting high every day, and drinking heavily on the weekends. And I started running with a new crowd, some new and different friends. The girls came on the scene. I kind of liked that. Got tired of drinking wine with those guys. I liked drinking wine with the girls, and so it was like the party was on, and I loved everything about it. I didn't get into a lot of trouble in school other than skipping school, but what happened when I turned 16. Now, I did start out with I don't talk about this much because I don't. But I did start out when I was 16 years old. I had a 68 Camaro that I had put a pretty hot engine in it. And so we liked to drag race outside of Carthage. And, it wouldn't be anything blind drunk. We'd pair off on the new road, which, if you notice, a straight road. And we would, be running at 110, 120 miles an hour, like side by side, hopefully, if I didn't get outrun. And I didn't think anything about that. We'd have a carload of people, and it was just it was just fun. And drinking and driving really was a way of life, because I stayed at home with my parents, and they didn't let me drink there at home. So I drank a lot of riding liquor. I mean, if we're going to be drinking, we're going to be driving. And I know that's a serious, dangerous recipe to be drinking and driving, but I didn't think anything about it, and that's just what we did. But what happened, that 68 Camaro, actually, I ended up tearing it up, and I had to graduate to a 72 Pinto that my sister, I know that's embarrassing. I should make something else up. But my sister went off to college, and my parents furnished it for her. When she went and got married, or whatever she did, she gave the Pinto back to my parents, and they loaned it to me for about 5 years until I tore it up. But anyhow, I just, I loved, once I got my driver's license, one of our promises is a new freedom and a new happiness. I had that. And I was pretty much, doing what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. Now, like I said, my dad had this store, and they weren't paying me enough money, and for some reason, this, I'll never know why, this makes no sense, but Dad, I don't know if he wasn't paying attention, but I had the combination to the safe. And so, I would steal money. I would take some out of the register. I'd take some out of the safe. And I had 2 other brothers. And I'm not going to take their inventory much. I'm just making an observation. They like to steal too. And, but we would just take, a certain amount of money, maybe just enough drinking money. And I would steal merchandise and not pay for it. And I thought it's just low-hanging fruit. And that was one of my challenges. The book says lack of power is our dilemma. Lack of money was my dilemma, and I was trying to fix that the best I could. So I stole a lot from my parents and took advantage of them, and I had become a guy, by the time I'm 16, 17, 18 years old, just incredibly selfish and dishonest. And the kind of friend I was is if you didn't have something that I wanted, whatever that looked like, I really didn't have any use for you. And if you crossed my path at some point, if I had a chance, I was going to take advantage of you. And I'm going to try to do that without you knowing it. Now, sometimes that didn't work out so well, but that's just who I've become, and I really didn't care. So I'm by this time. So I graduate from high school. The hotel that I stayed in when we went to Myrtle Beach, because you graduate from high school, you always go to the beach. I stayed in the back seat of a guy's, I believe it was a '68 Chevelle, is where I spent the night on my graduation weekend in the back seat of his car. Now the good news is I don't know where he was. He wasn't in the back seat with me. Just for the records, not that it really matters, but anyway. So that's just I didn't care. I was not a very good planner, and I'm just going to kind of hold up wherever I hold up. So I do get out of high school, and what happens? And this is the early '80s. My parents end up due to I'm sure me stealing a lot from them, other things going on. They ended up having to close the store and file bankruptcy. That's how financially destitute they had become. And so by the time I'm 18, 19, I know this. Now, I know it in my heart at some level, but I'm not talking about this to anybody, but I know I drink different than a lot, some other people. Now, I'm hanging with a crowd. Like, if I'm using them as a barometer to measure how I'm drinking, it really... some of them are lightweights, but some of them were really in a lot worse off than I was. But I just know in my heart that I'm out of control. That it's about this time that I can't hold a job. I do get lucky. I did find this girl that her dad made a lot of cash money, and she cashed me outside. That's where anyway. She knew how to steal it too, and it wouldn't be anything to get a few $100s. And I'm telling you, back then that was a lot of money. It's a lot of money now, but back then it was like robbing a bank. Well, that's basically what she did. She robbed her dad's bank, and so I was able to get her to support me for a while, which is not if you can get that deal, it ain't a bad deal. The problem is some other guys come along and apparently realized what was happening, and she made a decision to start supporting them too, which sort of hurt my feelings a little bit. I'm almost over it. I'm thinking once I hit 40 years of sobriety, I'm going to be over that. But anyway, I'm not going to rush in to get rid of that resentment. I'm just kidding. But anyway, that's how I got by. I didn't have to have a job. And so she, we parted ways. And here's what my life looks like at that, coming along this time. And is I'm waking up in the mornings, I'm sick. I'm always broke. And that's her fault because she ain't supporting me anymore. And, I'm shaking. and I know the only thing that's going to cure that really is to either smoke some weed or learn to take that morning drink. And now I didn't drink in the morning every morning, but it depending on how bad the shakes was on me, how bad things were, yeah, I'd take that morning drink. I always think this is funny. I don't know if it's funny or not. You can ask Daniel after I tell this story. Daniel said he never took the morning drink, but sometimes morning came and he'd still be drinking. I ain't sure if that counts as I don't know that counts as the morning drink, but it's a first cousin anyway. So my life is really, now I had a lot of fun. I'm not going to talk about, I don't want you to think that drinking whiskey and doing a bunch of drugs was all heartache and pain. I had a lot of fun doing it. But I'll tell you about the price I had to pay to have that fun, if you really want to call it that. I do get my first DUI at 18. I get pulled over, and so in Carthage I kind of got spoiled because I'd get pulled by the police and they'd see beer in the cooler and they'd tell me to go. I had one night I got pulled over. He said, "You need to get out of town till that beer's gone." And I'm like, "That's a great idea, Your Honor," or officer, whatever he was. And but they would just let me go. I mean, they'd make me park my car and take me home, or there'd be times where if somebody was riding with the cop, they'd drive my car home and take me home. And so I was kind of spoiled with that. And apparently, so that was the town cop in Carthage, but apparently the deputy sheriff didn't get that memo that they're supposed to leave me alone. And I got pulled one night there in Carthage, and I don't know how I remember this, but I had been drinking some TJ Swan, stepping out. And when he pulled me, I was stepping out of the car, and he asked me to walk a white line, and I was pretty tore up, and I said, "I can't walk, that's why I'm drinking. That's why I'm driving." And he didn't think that was funny. And so we went to jail. And so it was just kind of a slap on the wrist, not a big deal. But I continued to drink and be out of control for the next 2 years. That didn't slow me down. I would get a job. I worked with my brother's son, my oldest brother, but I was just, I was a sorry employee. And I say sorry. I was sick, and by this time I'm suffering from alcoholism, but there's sometimes a fine line between suffering from alcoholism plus being sorry. I think I had both going on. But I was not a good employee. I was not a good son to my parents. I hurt them a lot and hurt a lot of other people. And I was basically just a menace to society. And that was the price I was paying for having fun and getting drunk and just running wild. Like I was selling my soul to run wild. And I really didn't care. I really did not care at the time. Maybe deep down inside I wanted something different, but I didn't. I just knew there was nothing I could do about it. That was my lot in life, that I couldn't quit if I wanted to. For some reason I knew that. I had that information. I don't know where it came from. But anyway, I'm just rolling hard and fast the next 2 years. And what happened is January 29th, 1984, I'm sitting uptown in Carthage at the laundromat. I have graduated from the 72 Pinto to a 69 Plymouth Valiant, slant six, in case anybody was wondering. My parents financed that car. They didn't think they should give it to me because they needed to teach me some responsibility and help me be accountable. They financed it. My payment was $20 a week because they knew I wasn't going to make a monthly payment. Who could make an $80 a month car payment? So they said, weekly, you're going to pay $20. And that's not hard to do if you have a job or can steal money or find somebody to take care of you, but I couldn't. And so what happened is they ended up repossessing my 69 Plymouth Valiant. Now you should, that almost should be in the big book. If your parents repossess your Valiant because you can't make it, you're probably alcoholic. Maybe we'll get to rewrite the big book, probably not. But anyway, I'm sitting uptown and the cop rolls up beside me. He wasn't a stranger to me. I wasn't a stranger to him. And he searches me I have been drinking. I wasn't quite as drunk as I was the last time. But He arrests me, and he charges me with my second offense DUI, and he charges me with a felony possession with intent to sell and deliver marijuana. I like to think I become an entrepreneur at that point. I was a big-time drug dealer. He took my weed, I had an ounce, and all my cash. I had $80. And now that was a lot of money back in 1980, whenever forward. I think it's like $8,000 now or something, ain't it? I don't know. But anyway, my life was, I was in bad shape. And what happened, we got in front of the magistrate. This is the crazy thing about being, I guess, from a small town. The magistrate, his wife had been my second grade school teacher, and he's trying to talk this cop out of charging me with the felony. And I love that magistrate. I'll always love that dude for trying. At least he tried to talk him out of charging me with it. But the police officer, we'd had some run-ins before. He'd taken my stuff and not charged me anything, but he had a felony on me, and he thought, I don't know what he thought, but whatever he thought he needed to do, he wasn't going to be persuaded by that magistrate. So anyway, what happens then, and in our group, I know a lot of groups do a lot of what we call CPCPI work. And that's cooperation with professional community and public information. And I'll tell you why that work is so important. At some point prior to me going to see my lawyer and going to see that a substance abuse counselor, somebody in Alcoholics Anonymous somewhere along the line had done a good job with those guys. Especially the substance abuse counselor, and he was a non-alcoholic. And when I went to see him, because I'm trying to figure out what I need to do to try to look good in front of the judge. Like, I ain't looking to quit drinking. Like, that's the furthest thing from my mind. Because number one, I'm thinking that I don't want to quit drinking. I don't want to quit getting high, and I don't. Even if I really wanted to, I couldn't. I mean, I just knew that it had become such a way of life. But anyway. I go see this counselor, and what he did, and I think a lot when Tom Ivester would tell his story, like the dude said, Ivester, there's an AA meeting, I think you should go. And this substance abuse counselor, he told me, hey, there's an AA meeting. He told me where it was. I probably wasn't even a meeting scheduled in. He said, you really should go. And I'm like 20 years old, and I'm like, and I feel like I'm getting sentenced to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I don't know. Here's the only thing I know about Alcoholics Anonymous at that time. A couple of guys from Carthage, RG and Reeves, had gotten sober. They went off to a treatment center and got sober and had a good life and were doing good. And I knew those guys ran wild, but I thought those guys probably should get sober. They're like, at that time, they were in their early to mid 30s. I'm like, my God, they're old. They should have quit drinking, but I'm only 20 years old. Like, I don't, that's all I knew about AA. But I went to the meeting over here at the Episcopal Church, and I didn't get anything out of it. And what I did was I went back to that counselor the following week. And for some reason, maybe I was somewhat desperate. I was probably more scared than desperate. I told him the truth. No, I hadn't been sober that week. My God, honestly, I couldn't have done it even if I really had set my mind to it, which I never did, to being sober. And he told me about a treatment facility in Rockingham, and he's like, there's a place down there, Samaritan Colony, you should probably go to that. It's an 8-week program at the time. I'm like, this dude has officially lost his mind. I mean, I'm pretty sure as valuable and as important as I am, the world is not going to operate with me gone for 8 weeks. And this was on a Friday, and on Monday I'm in this treatment facility, and my life has reached an all-time low. Like, I'm so full of fear and doubt and confusion, like I don't know which way's up. And what happened was, they took us to some meetings, they took us through some steps, and what happens when I started reading in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I started hearing people's story. We went to AA meetings, and I hear people tell their story, and I met some people that were sober like for eternity, like 3 years was an eternity for a guy that couldn't stay sober a week. And I felt like their life was as pathetic and as pitiful as mine, and they were sober. And they seemed to be happy, and they were having a good time. And that gave me hope. And I think the spiritual demonstration the book talks about can be that simple. Like when we see somebody that is free and happy and sober, it can be a few weeks or a few months, but it could be a couple of 100 years like Wallace. Regardless of how long it is, that's a powerful message. And I was sitting here before the meeting started, before y'all got things cranked up, and I couldn't see everybody, but I was just listening to the laughter and the camaraderie and the conversation. I'm fairly sure probably a few lies were being told. But to me, that was just attractive, the fellowship. And, so that gave me hope. And anyway, what happened, just kind of roll forward a little bit. I finally get out of that place, and I go get tried for my infractions, Josh. And I'll guarantee you, like, I don't have that suit now because I don't think it'd fit. But I have my finest 3-piece suit and necktie that I own up in that courtroom in Carthage. And, I got tried and got convicted, lost my license for 4 years, got them back in 2, which was a miracle and a lot of work. So when I got tried, I went and got in my car and left after I just lost my driver's license. Like, I ain't the sharpest knife in the drawer. But what I did was I started going to some meetings, and what happened is I took the steps as it's laid out in the book, and I did an inventory the best I could, and I got all that junk out the best I could, the best I knew how that I could do at the time. And what happened, and it was simple and it wasn't overwhelming, it's just what happened. Power started showing up in my life a day at a time, and I started staying sober. And I was a little aggravated early on in early sobriety because I'm 20 years old. Like, I'm not even old enough to go in the whiskey store and buy some Jack Daniels. By the way, I forgot to mention this. My vehicles kept progressing downhill, but he did capture a pint of Jack Daniels the night I got arrested for my second DUI. So at least I'd graduated from T.J. Swan and Mad Dog to some Jack Daniels. Must have been on a run there. But I was just what happened. The power showed up, and I went from a guy that was really aggravated that I couldn't drink successfully and had to quit at such an early age. And I kept trying to take some steps and go to some meetings and what happened is things changed, my attitude changed, my heart changed. I felt like I was at a level of desperation, and I wanted to get well. And that was my experience early on with the steps. When they started talking about God and spirituality, like, I didn't want any of that. Not only did I not want it, even if I did want it, I knew it wouldn't work for me. I mean, I didn't understand any of it. And what I did with that is I just kept it simple. I just tried to pray and ask for help and be open and honest and talk to people. And when I make a mistake, I try to clean it up and I try to do better. And been doing that for about 37 years, making mistakes and trying to do better. But I just, I did the best I could, and I'll tell you this: probably the first 5 years of my life, I was not a very good member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I love it when my sponsor says he's always been sponsored, he's always had a home group, he's always helped guys ever since he came into Alcoholics Anonymous, and he's a guy that as well has been sober permanently a day at a time since 1987, I believe, and that's not my experience. Like, I went to some meetings, I did work some steps early on, but, I started going to church, and I just thought AA is not for me, and I just wasn't a very good member. That's just the bottom line. And got a girlfriend, got a job, making money, just trying to to figure it out, anything but AA. And then what happened, I quit going to church, the girlfriend's gone, and I'm just a basket case. Like, I'm an emotional wreck. And so luckily I'm still connected with a guy that said, you need to join Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm 5 years sober. And I use that word sober very loosely, but that's just who I was. And so I did join the VAST group and got involved in the fellowship, but really didn't get involved in service and trying to really be I love the VAST group. It served me well, but it was just a different deal. But it was fine for me because I didn't really want to help anybody. But what happened is, and I'll be grateful, always grateful for this. My brother, Bill, a lot of you knew him. He's since passed away, and I knew Tom, and he'd some of those guys that started a group over at Brownson, and he said, Tom's doing a big book workshop or whatever. Let's go check it out. And I'm like, all right. And like, we didn't get any hurry. Like, we do some of those now. We're going to roll through the book in about 14 weeks. Like, I've been in, sometimes it's taken us 23 months, I think. But we drill down at a different level, and it was good. But that was a good experience. And we went through that, and Tom met some of us, and he threw something on us that I don't know if I'd have been any more shocked if he told me he started drinking again. But what he said was, because I knew he'd started that home group, it was a good home group, and I know he loved his home group. He said, I'm thinking about starting another group. Are y'all interested? And I'm like, well, I guess. But this was probably in 96, early 97. And we decided to start Primary Purpose Group. Or actually, Tom decided to start a group, and we bought into his vision. And you've heard it said, I've heard it said that the only thing you need to start a group of Alcoholics Anonymous is a resentment and a coffee pot. And I guess maybe there's some truth to that, but the good news is we started a Primary Purpose Group. We weren't mad at anybody. We just wanted a group where levels of service was involved. And I think we've been able to, through some blood, sweat, and tears over the years, and a lot of help from a lot of people, been able to achieve that. But so anyway, that's kind of how the Primary Purpose Group, evolved. But and I'll always appreciate Tom's leadership and him inviting us in to be a part of that. So I ended up getting my license back, and just kind of to recap what my life looked like is after I was sober a couple years, I got my license back. I ended up getting a job that I kept for about 5 years. It was a good job. I appreciated working for that company. They ended up going bankrupt too and cutting people back. And it wasn't my fault. I didn't have any keys to the kingdom or the safe or anything. But and then at that point, I ended up just kind of going out on my own, start my own business, and been able to make all that work. And I'll tell you this, just kind of fast forwarding. So a couple of traumatic things have happened in sobriety. This is coming to mind. It ain't really traumatic. Well, it probably is traumatic to Jeanette, but we ended up getting married in '99, and I appreciate Jeanette and I always appreciate her support, and she sort of knew what she was getting when we got married. Not maybe 100%, but anyway, it is what it is. But I appreciate. Always appreciate her love and support. But what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me and what it means to me is, and what I've learned, and I know this is probably hard for maybe new people to wrap our minds around, but it's way beyond not drinking. It's way beyond just sobriety. And what I mean by that is, because of Alcoholics Anonymous, for a pretty good while now, I've been able to be a good son to my parents. As far as I know, now they did help me some after I got sober. They would loan me money, and I did something really weird. I paid them back. And they didn't loan me a lot. Now, they loaned me just enough to take care of whatever it was, maybe $100 or so. But but I learned to start being a good son to my parents. I try to be a good brother. I try to be a good uncle, a good friend, a good employee early on, an employer. And, that's what Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me, that I can go from that guy that's selfish and self-centered and full of a lot of hate and anger and resentment to a guy that hopefully has some love and some tolerance and some patience, and to appreciate other people's viewpoints and their ideas, even if they're way different than mine, whether it's a political idea, their sexual ideas, or any other ideas, racial stuff or whatever. I try to honor and respect and live by our traditions the best I can and put all that stuff aside, especially in Alcoholics Anonymous. But I also try to do that in my personal life. I make sure that if I throw something on Facebook, you're probably just going to see a picture of a copperhead or something, if I put anything at all. But I'm not going to put anything else that I feel like might drive a wedge or create a barrier between me and other people. And that's just me, and I just think that's how I honor the traditions. So what happened, so my dad was able to see me sober for 18 years before he passed away. He got sick and passed away. I often wondered if there's something that would cause me to drink again. I'm confident that there probably isn't at this point, because I've been through some tough times, but I thought maybe the death of a parent, because I've been through the death of grandparents and was fine. But when Dad passed away, like, I was able to be there for him during his last days, and just be able to be a part of that process. So I was able to walk through that, and it's through the help of prayer and meditation and good friends praying for me. And that was the other thing, that I didn't want any part of spirituality or God, but I did become open to some ideas with spirituality. I became willing to take some actions, and that's one of the things I love about Alcoholics Anonymous. When I think about working with a new guy, I try to go through the book and sponsor him as the book tells me I'm supposed to help people. And I let him know, and it didn't say this exactly. Well, I guess it probably does, maybe not these words. The purpose of Alcoholics Anonymous isn't to provide motivation or to convince a guy that he needs to quit drinking. For me, that motivation and that desperation, I brought that with me to Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't get it after I was here. What I did was realize that there's a solution here, and that it's open and it's simple. The other thing that happened, I got 6 minutes till. Does that sound about right? Yeah. We'll wrap it up. Might wrap it up at about 5 till. The other thing that's happened, so my brother that invited me to go to Tom's workshop, he got sick and passed away. That was tough. And I hated to lose him, because he became a good member of Alcoholics Anonymous and a good friend. And we wanted to kill each other when we were drinking. But also, one of the things that I appreciate is the fact that Richard Page showed up at our group. I don't know, I think it was 2008, 2009, and he really, like Tom and Wallace, I appreciate you guys and your leadership, but Richard, he would start working with new guys. I'd see him go down the hall before the meeting, or come back before the meeting, go down the hall after the meeting with these new guys. And so Richard shows up as a new guy. He wanting to sponsor everybody. But I asked him, I'm like, you sit down and read the book with him? Because that was kind of different to me. And he said, yeah. He said, get you a new guy. I asked him to show me if he'd sit down with me and go through the book. He said, no, but if you get you a new guy, we'll all sit down and do it, because he wasn't going to just waste his time on me. I had to have a new guy. And I'll always appreciate Richard's friendship, and I appreciate his leadership, because he's a guy that passed away too. So my brother passed away in January of 2011, and that was rough. It was devastating. He was in his early 50s. And Richard passed away that following July. And so 2 important people in my life were gone. But, there's a time to be born and a time to die. None of us are getting out of this world alive. And, I just, by practicing some principles and just continuing to be open and honest with a sponsor, that power continues to show up in my life regardless of the circumstances, regardless of what happens. So that's one of the things I've learned. I'm not defined by what happens in my life. I'm defined by how I am willing to take some spiritual action to walk through whatever pain that I have to walk through. So one of the most devastating things, and people say family can't help family. I think family can help family if family wants help. But if family don't want help, it's kind of like anybody else. It's a hopeless condition, and there's nothing anybody can do. If I reject the spiritual help that was offered to me, you obviously, I believe, have a different speaker tonight. But I had a niece that she started coming to some meetings and was desperate. Well, her life was in trouble. I'm not sure about the desperation, but she was in trouble. And, I was able to experience what the big book says firsthand. It's either I can continue to blot out my intolerable existence the best I can. It says it's something like that, or I can accept spiritual help. And unfortunately, she didn't want the solution that Alcoholics Anonymous had to offer. And I guess it's going on about 4 years ago this year. She died of a drug overdose, 29 years old. And I'm like, that. You read about that, you hear about it, it happens in other people's family. Like, that don't happen in our family. But it did. And, I don't know. I've always been pretty passionate about helping people and helping them to get sober. Or just introduce them to the simple kit of spiritual tools the book talks about. But that was a hard pill to swallow. Like, could have I done more? Could I have done something better? And the answer is no. I don't have any power over anybody else's alcoholism. It's up to me. It's up to me as an individual, like, to figure out, am I sick? Am I suffering from a spiritual illness, and do I want to get well? I had so I've worked with trying to help some folks over the years. I have one guy, this is an experience that I hope it never comes to anybody, but it might. He was writing his fourth step, and he goes off on a hunting trip, and he commits suicide. I mean, this ain't just, alcoholism is a very serious business, and I believe we should take Alcoholics Anonymous as a very serious solution. Now, we're going to have fun and cut up and remember Rule 62 and not take myself and everybody so serious. But when people show up here suffering from alcoholism without a solution, there's a small window of opportunity to help those folks because they could slip away and either die or never get sober. And I think that's one of the things that I've been shown here in Alcoholics Anonymous, that if a new person shows up, the most important thing we can do is just reach out and encourage them and welcome them to our home group. And I think we could do that at any meeting that we go to. Anyway, I'm out of time. Wallace is tapping his foot, and he'll be tapping his watch next. It won't matter. I'll still keep talking if you do, because anyway. But I do appreciate being here. Brad, thank you for asking me. Congratulations on 20 years, right? In 3 days. But if you're new here, I would just encourage you. There's a lot of solid male and there's a lot of solid female members in this home group and in AA in this community that have walked where we walked and been where we've been. And that's just one of the things I love about Alcoholics Anonymous is nobody shoved anything down my throat. Nobody put any demands or makes me do anything. If I want to get well, and this is just the way I've been sponsored. They're willing to help, but nobody has ever forced themselves on me or made me do anything as a sponsee. And I try to honor that leadership and do that with guys that I work with. That no pressures or demands. Like if a guy wants to get well, I'll do anything I can to help him. So, and surely I'd be remiss to leave you out celebrating 1 year of sobriety. So congratulations, guys. I appreciate it.